Episode 2, Chapter 1, The show's about to start. Chapter 1, Come inside, the show's about to start. Once, the Temple of Elements had been a wondrous place. A perfectly square, white marble building with 4 corner towers, each one dedicated to one of the temple's masters, bright and shining from the many windows that allowed the sun's light to smile upon the temple's interior, with people from all the world coming to praise the makers of the world and ask for their blessings. Once. Now, the Temple of Fiends was derelict, abandoned and collapsed in on itself like a rotting fruit. The towers were shrunken stubs, the windows all broken and covered, the shining white marble faded down to a dull, diseased-looking grey. The people were gone as well, none of them daring to come and see what had replaced them in the temple's halls. Here, there were monsters. And far, far worse. From the 4 corners of the temple, 4 beings emerged slowly, creeping through the darkness. Turning to stare only for a moment, the undead forces that held the temple now scattered out of the way, scrambling to the side passages that the 4 visitors would be uninterested in. One skeleton was too slow, as one of the beings passed over it. It was obliterated without even the slightest trace of notice, consumed in flames by contact with the being. At the exact same moment, all 4 arrived in the central chamber, where the master of the temple waited. "Greetings, all." Garland, the latest caretaker of the Temple of Fiends, nodded to each of them in turn. "Lady Tiamat, Lord Kraken, Lord Lich." He paused for a moment before turning to the last. "Lady Carrie, must you snack upon my soldiers? Surely there are others." "Oh, did I? I didn't notice." The being he addressed paused for a moment, then bowed its head in admission. "So I did. I apologize, Sir Garland. That's what happens when you come here while still half asleep." Another of the 4, the one that had been addressed as Kraken, growled. "Honestly, can't you take anything seriously?" "I take my sleep seriously." Carrie yawned theatrically. "Can I help it if I love those dreams so? But if I didn't take these seriously either, I wouldn't even show." "Quit your griping, Kraken. Enough, both of you." The one that had been named as Tiamat shook its head. Heads. In disgust. "Stop your petty squabbling. We have more important matters to attend to. It's them. They've finally reached maturity. The light warriors are growing ready to come at us." "I noticed." Carrie laughed horribly. "Such fun we shall have." "I don't really see what the big deal is about it," Kraken muttered. "Remember the Sky Warriors? They were fairly pathetic. I expect this lot will be the same. Humans, actually being a threat to us? Absurd." "Well..." The 4th being, Lich, leaned forward and spoke for the first time. "Perhaps Lady Tiamat is right. She is the eldest of us this time around, after all. Although it would be silly to drop everything for this. Still, perhaps we should do something at least to remove them, rather than take the chance." "You seem to be forgetting who we have with us in our endeavor." "Lich." Kraken sneered. "Chance is always on our side." "Well, I don't want anybody removing mine." Carrie shook her head. "He belongs to me, and none of you are going to ruin my fun." Tiamat hissed in exasperation. "All of you, stop quibbling. We rule this world, not play with it. If there is even the slightest hint of a threat to us, we must quell it." "Oh, so now you're taking his side?" Kraken grumbled, indicating Lich. "Perhaps." Garland spoke quietly, causing all 4 to fall silent and watch him.
Since you all seem so busy, perhaps I can handle this for you. These light warriors, I can deal with it. You need not trouble yourselves with such petty matters as them.
None of them responded for several moments before Tiamat finally spoke up.
You wish to handle this? I mean no insult, but in your condition, can you manage them? As you pointed out, Lady Tiamat, they are just beginning to start now.
Garland reminded her.
They are nowhere near their potential power, which makes this the optimal time to remove them. If I act now, I should be able to kill them all and end this argument. Ah! They are all scattered across the world, Sir Garland.
Lich informed him nervously.
They have not yet convened. But one of them is near here. In Corneria. I have been watching him.
Garland explained.
He is close to the princess there, who is also mentioned in passing by that stupid prophecy. To the sages, she is necessary for their success. And for him, even more. If I take her, I like it.
Kraken smiled.
How cunning. Trick them into coming together too early, and then wipe them out when they're weak. An excellent plan. Just don't completely obliterate them,
Carrie maintained.
Leave enough of mine for me to take back to my volcano. That aside, I have no worries. Do as you think is best. I approve, of course.
Lich followed hastily.
It sounds like you've got everything figured out. I know I'll rest easier when they're all in the ground. Very well.
Tiamat conceded.
However, I think I'll look into other things concerning this affair, just in case. For now, though, I see no harm in leaving things to you. Very well then. We are in agreement. Shall we leave you to your business then, Sir Knight? If you do not mind.
Garland nodded. Nodding back in farewell, the four beings of darkness drifted back the way they came, to the shattered corners of the temple, where they faded away and were gone. Slowly, ever so slowly, Garland rose from his seat and walked to the back of the chamber, where a sphere of black crystal sat on an altar, like a hole in the world. Placing both hands upon it, Garland began murmuring to himself.
Well then. Let them come against me. We shall see what kind of power mortals can raise against the forces of absolute chaos themselves. And we shall see what we must do to crush them.
As if in agreement, the crystal orb began emitting a low purr, and Garland spoke no more, completely entranced by it. After some time, he turned away and sent out a mental summons, causing a ghoul to walk in and bow to him.
You have an order for us, Master? Yes. Tell all who gather here to assemble, and prepare for battle.
Garland ordered.
We go to Corneria. Let the humans tremble at the sight of us and wither as we howl. The hordes of chaos march.
The ghoul smiled, a horrible thing to behold.
As you command, Master.
The seas, as always, were violent. Even the most well-built ship, such as this one, risked life and limb setting out upon them. Massive waves crashed against the side and slopped up onto the decks, and the winds caused nervous sailors to stumble about as they watched for their salvation.
Land ho!
One of them cried out, pointing ahead of the vessel.
Looks like a harbor.
Excitedly, all the other sailors turned to look as well.
It's a harbor,
Another confirmed.
Got to be Corneria. We made it, lads. Don't say things like that until we're safely docked.
The first one warned him.
Kraken'll hear it and send a waterspout to spite us.
The one who had spoken rashly went pale and nodded, knowing that if he persisted his shipmates would leave him in Corneria. None of them were willing to risk the attention of the Fiend of Water. There was enough danger already simply in his whim, and the creatures who served him. The ship's captain was promptly notified, and he himself went to a cabin where his 2 passengers waited.
Is there something wrong, Captain?
The female of the 2, a red-haired young woman in hooded white robes, looked to him curiously. The captain shook his head quickly.
It's just the opposite, miss. Corneria has been sighted, we'll be docking there within the hour. Took long enough.
The other passenger grunted laconically. Though his blue robes were unhooded, he instead wore a pointed, wide-brimmed straw hat that completely obscured his face in darkness.
The seas are treacherous.
The captain shrugged.
Every time I return home I think I've had enough chancing my life on them, but I can never actually stop. One of these days I suppose my luck'll run out, but until then... Oh well. Anyways, thought you should know. I expect you'll want to disembark as soon as we get there. Your business and all that.
He bowed once then closed the door as he left, muttering something to himself about mages. The docking went surprisingly well for once. The seas played along near the coast and the ship was able to slide in without trouble. It helped that there was only one other ship at the harbor, one of elvish make by the looks of it and flying the flag of that nation. As the captain had predicted, less than a minute after the anchor had been dropped the 2 passengers emerged, carrying their few possessions in bags over their shoulders.
Thank you for conveying us here, Captain.
The girl smiled at all of the crew. The other said nothing, his gaze on the city ahead of them.
It's for the best, miss.
The captain smiled back a bit uncertainly.
We'll all be wishing you luck.
Walking down the gangplank, the 2 travelers quickly spotted the only other person on the docks, a brawny youth with a shock of tomato-red hair. He was wearing the armor of the Cornerian Guard, though for some reason he had chosen not to wear their helmet.
Hello. I expect you would be the 2 light warriors from Gaia.
He greeted them warmly.
I'm here to show you to the castle. My name's Luke. It's nice to meet you, Luke.
The white-robed woman nodded to him.
Yes, that's us. I'm Mary, and this is my brother, Vlad.
Vlad nodded once, remaining silent.
Are you one of the Knights of Corneria? Knight in training, actually.
Luke admitted, scratching his head.
I haven't been knighted yet, but I'm working on it. The other one came in yesterday from Elfland, that's his ship over there. He'll be waiting at the inn.
Turning, he led them through the gates into the city of Corneria itself. It was a pretty, though somewhat militant-looking, capital for the kingdom at the center of the world. The walls were high, and most of the houses were built so as to provide additional layers of defense should the need arise. The inn Luke referred to was near the city's entrance. A tan-skinned, somewhat short and scrawny elf with blue hair was lounging out front, clad in leather. As he saw them, he broke into a grin.
Hey, Luke. The innkeep said the others had arrived and that you had gone to say hi. These them. You got it. These are Mary and Vlad from Gaia. And this here is Drake. From Elfland, in case you couldn't tell.
Drake winked.
You don't look like much.
Vlad spoke for the first time since their arrival.
Be nice, brother.
Mary sighed, then smiled at the newcomer.
You're one of the light warriors as well then, Drake. That's my job, it seems.
Reaching into his own backpack, Drake pulled out a crystalline orb the size of his head. Though its surface was smooth and unblemished, the orb seemed filled with an internal darkness that clouded it completely, shutting out all light.
They tell me that since I've got this, I'm a hero. I guess I'm better than nothing. Same for you fellas. More or less,
Mary admitted as she and Vlad produced their own orbs.
I don't know how we'll do, but we'll certainly try our best. We were kind of counting on having more time to prepare,
Vlad explained, sounding irritated.
I suppose it's not your fault you're not exactly intimidating. You were called to Corn area without any warning far ahead of time, like us.
He looked at Luke.
I assume there's an explanation. Yeah.
Luke frowned darkly.
The king will want to tell you about it. He's kind of involved. Let's go see him and he'll explain. Wait.
Mary blinked.
Aren't there supposed to be 4 light warriors? Where's the other one?
After a moment, Drake began to chuckle.
Luke, man. You didn't tell them. Kind of slipped my mind, I guess.
Luke admitted as he pulled a 4th orb out.
Good thing I remembered to bring this. I'm the 4th one. Oh.
Mary smiled.
Well then, lead the way, Sir Luke. Just Luke, please.
The knight in training pleaded as they walked towards the back of the city, where the castle was situated.
I don't think I rate a sir yet, and even if I did it'd make me uncomfortable. We're going to be friends anyways, I hope. We'll see.
Vlad grunted noncommittally. Corn area Castle, the heart of the realm, was built up against the back wall of the city. It had once been bright and white, but years had faded it, though they had not brought the castle down. As they neared the massive entry doors, the guardsmen on either side of it glanced at them.
Hey, Luke.
One of them greeted the youth.
The king's waiting to see the light warriors. Are these them? You got it, Mike.
Luke nodded.
We're going up to see him now.
Nodding, the guards opened the door for them and bowed deeply.
We seem to have a reputation here,
Drake noticed.
Makes me uncomfortable, to be honest,
Luke admitted.
Us too.
Mary laughed.
Back in Gaia, I mean. We always asked them to stop, but they never listened. What about you, Drake? Oh, same here, same here.
The elf shrugged.
So, where's the throne room? Up here, on the 2nd floor.
Luke led them up the stairs into a long hall that stretched without any other side doors. Turning left, the light warriors walked to the hall's end. With a nod from Luke, the guards there opened those doors as well.
The light warriors, Your Highness.
One of them called.
Ah! You have arrived.
The man sitting on the throne was a somewhat plain-looking man of middle years, with short blonde hair and a trim mustache. The red robes and crown didn't really suit him, but he bore them with an air of experience and responsibility. Smiling briefly, King John IV, ruler of Corn area, looked them over.
Well, welcome to Corn area at any rate. I hope you like our city. Looks pretty nice to me, Your Highness.
Drake agreed easily.
Not as many trees as Elfland's capital, but I suppose that's to be expected. It looks wonderful, Your Highness.
Mary smiled. To her left, Vlad nodded curtly before speaking.
Your Highness. Why have you called us here? We all expected 5 years more at least before performing our duty. Preferably 10. We're not exactly prepared, to put it lightly.
The king looked at Luke with a frown.
You didn't tell them, Luke. Ah. I thought you would prefer to do so, Your Majesty.
Luke frowned as well.
After all, it is your daughter who's... Well... You know. Your daughter.
Drake blinked.
What's this now? I suppose you're right.
King John leaned back with a hefty sigh.
Unfortunately, my young heroes, sometimes we cannot choose when the time to act comes. Allow me to provide you with a little background information. You all know, of course, that the Temple of Fiends lies northwest of here.
After waiting for them to nod, he continued.
Though none of the fiends themselves reside there, it seems to be held in importance by all of them, and thus it is inhabited by foul monsters. Large numbers of them. And in addition to those is Corneria's Scourge. A man named Garland, also known as the Chaos Knight. He seems to have some connection to the fiends, and has emerged periodically to ravage the lands around here for centuries. The stories say he was once the head of the Cornerian Guard, a good and noble man, but do not say how he changed and became our national enemy. How strong is he?
Mary inquired. The king shook his head.
It seems to be a point of debate. Records of olden days claim him to have power on par with the fiends themselves, but that seems to be exaggerated. He's more of a figurehead for the monsters there, leading them to the slaughter and then letting them do as they wish. Even so, their strength is such that we have been unable to scour them from our lands. They're far from the most dangerous servants of the fiends, but they have two major advantages. First, numbers. Second, their lair, the Temple of Fiends. No mortal man can set foot on that cursed ground and live. Except the destined ones. The light warriors. Us.
Drake frowned.
I think I see where you're going with this, Your Majesty. You want us to take out this Garland. But I don't quite see why. Or to be specific, I don't see why now. Like you said, Garland's been around for centuries. Why would he rate us being called into action ahead of schedule and undertrained? A recent development.
King John explained grimly.
For the most part, Garland was not a critical threat to the kingdom. The capital is still strong enough to hold his armies off. When they marched, it was usually on small towns or villages, and we sent our own forces to chase them off. But then, a week ago, disaster struck. Garland and his monsters captured my youngest daughter, Princess Sarah. What?
Mary's eyes widened.
How? Luke was there.
King John looked at the knight in training again.
He can explain it better than I. Me and the princess were out in the forest north of the castle.
Luke recounted, subdued.
Out of nowhere, the monsters charged towards us. We ran, but we knew we wouldn't be able to get away. Sarah told me to leave her so I could report this, saying they might take her alive but would kill me without a thought if I interfered. I refused, of course. But she pushed me into a river. I had some armor on, and by the time I got it off and came back up, they were already retreating with her. She was alive, I saw that, but...
He fell silent.
So that's the situation, huh?
Vlad stared at the king.
Problematic, I'll agree, Your Majesty. But, I don't think it quite justifies ruining the plan. None of us are hero material yet, and now that we've convened, we might not be able to unconvene for more training. Is one princess really worth dooming the entire world?
Drake winced, but nodded.
Bit harsh, Vlad. But you do kind of have a point. Sorry, Your Majesty, but if everything rests on us like the prophecy said... It's the prophecy that made His Majesty decide on this course of action.
Luke explained.
We're not the only thing in there, you know? Sarah's mentioned in it. By name. The sages haven't yet figured out exactly why, but she is going to be important. If Garland kills her, that might screw it all. And we're the only ones who can save her.
Mary realized.
Because only the light warriors can go into the Temple of Fiends. That's the gist of it, I'm afraid.
King John admitted.
I'm sorry, believe me. If this was just about my daughter, I would indeed have to make a decision that would destroy me. But it's not. All I can do, is ask for your forgiveness, and your aid. Please. Save my daughter. We can't overlook the possibility that this might be exactly what they're planning.
Vlad noted.
To lure us into a trap and destroy us while we're weak. It sounds like what they'd do. Yeah, maybe.
Drake scowled.
But like it or not, if the prophecy says we'll need her, we don't have a choice in the matter. Looks like we're committed. I'm in. As I assume you are already, Luke. Of course.
Luke nodded.
Sarah's my friend. I'd die to save her. And just because she wouldn't let me once doesn't mean I won't risk it again. I suppose we've got no choice in the matter either.
Mary smiled.
I'm not much for fighting, but I can help keep us on our feet. If we all give it everything we have, we might be able to pull it off.
After a moment, Vlad sighed deeply.
I still don't like this, but if you three got killed I'd be doomed anyways, so I might as well join in. Thank you. All of you.
The king smiled.
I've already arranged for the finest rooms in the inn to be reserved for you. I'll show you around the city.
Luke offered.
We can hit all the shops. Weapons, armor. Magic?
Vlad questioned, eyes glowing. Luke nodded.
That too. And then we can leave tomorrow if you're ready. Might as well.
Drake chuckled.
Ah well, at least it won't be boring, eh? Luke. I've been meaning to ask about something.
Drake coughed politely as the two of them waited for Vlad and Mary to come back out of the local magic shops.
The prices around here are kinda low. Yeah, our economy's having problems at the moment.
Luke admitted as the other two light warriors walked out to join them.
The scholars all say it'll perk up again pretty soon, though. It's just as well, all things considered.
Mary pointed out.
We're not exactly rich. It took nearly all the money we had to persuade a ship to take us to Corneria. As a matter of fact, we're fresh out now. I'm glad the king cleared us for the inn. Same here.
Drake admitted, then chuckled.
Well, if we ever go back to Elfland, things'll be quite a bit different. Fair warning. The same goes for Gaia.
Mary sighed.
I was hoping we could get a few healing potions for the trip to the temple, but oh well.
Drake frowned speculatively.
Now hold on. We might have a way. I don't know about this place, but back home, there was always a quick way to get money for people of our particular talents.
Luke caught on immediately.
Monster hunting, you mean?
The elf nodded.
Well, the guards here do that as well, but they don't pay all that well. Still, I suppose we should probably practice working together before we actually head out to the temple, so we might as well. What kind of monsters are there around here?
Mary inquired as they walked towards the city gates.
Around Gaia, they're too dangerous for most people to do that. The local merchants still offer fixed bounties for thinning the populations, but only the best warriors and sorcerers around can actually do it. Except for the area around the temple, it's pretty tame, actually.
Luke shrugged.
Mostly imps, although local wolves and occasionally a horse get turned nasty by the temple's aura. Some of them even turn grey and seem to get stronger. The sage who used to be here, Lucan, said Garland did something to them to cause it. Still, we should be able to handle them without much fuss.
As they left the city gates, Luke looked around and sighed.
Me and Sarah never had any trouble with them, anyways.
He pointed towards the edge of a forest that circled most of the city save its front.
Probably some in there.
True to his word, as soon as they slipped between the trees, there was an angry chittering and 5 short, humanoid creatures jumped out of the underbrush. They were all wearing simple clothes the same orange as their hair, and in their hands they clutched tiny daggers.
Imps, I presume.
Drake drawled as he drew a long rapier that was the standard of the Cornarian army. Luke had a matching one that he held low as the two of them stepped up, side by side, to the front of the fray. The first imp charged at him and got its head removed for its efforts, but while it did, another one jumped onto his shoulder.
I got it!
Yelling, Drake stabbed it in the neck, and his rapier went through cleanly, scratching Luke as well.
Hey, watch it!
The warrior grunted, then turned as another shape jumped out, shrieking. This one's skin was an ashen grey, and its hair and clothes a dull purple.
Oh great, their boss! I'll take him, you guys hit the others. Got it, whoa!
Drake spun as the third and fourth imps both jumped him, while the last one edged around towards the siblings from Gaia, who were watching and waiting. Grunting, Drake attempted to fend his attackers off, without much success.
Little help here. If you insist.
Sighing, Vlad glanced at his sister, then raised his hands. A bolt of lightning plunged out of the sky into one imp, frying it instantly as well as slightly singing Drake.
Still need to work on that one's control a bit. You think?
Drake yelled, waving a puff of smoke out of his face, then wincing as the other imp sliced him across the face. Gasping, Mary ran up while at the same time, Luke glanced over from the slain grey imp.
Hold on, buddy!
The knight in training yelled, running up just as Mary began swinging a massive iron hammer.
Get off him, you, oh, no!
Instead of hitting the imp, the hammer bounced off of Luke's head. The warrior winced, but remained upright.
Good thing I've got a hard head. Whoa!
Scowling, he suddenly plunged his sword over Mary's shoulder into the imp that had been about to stab her in the back.
Close one. Take that, and that.
Drake was snarling, stabbing at the last imp. As Vlad raised his hands again, Luke turned to the elf.
Drake. It's dead, already. Huh. Oh, it is. Hoops.
The elf stepped back, just in time, as it turned out, as another lightning bolt sizzled down and obliterated most of the corpse.
Yikes! Man, what did Luke just say? I couldn't see clearly past you, and I'd already cast the spell when he pointed that out.
Vlad explained gruffly.
Well, at least the head's still intact.
Luke attempted to smile.
That's the part we need for the bounty. Although it does look like we need to work on our teamwork a little. Gee, think so.
Vlad muttered caustically.
Sorry about that.
Mary sighed.
I've never been able to get the hang of most weapons. All I can do is swing this thing around. Doesn't take much skill. I'll try to work on my aim.
She brightened up a moment at a thought.
Well, at least I can do this.
As she chanted some strange words, green sparkles settled over Luke and Drake, healing their wounds.
A white mage. And your brother's a black mage.
Luke nodded.
Handy stuff. Although from what I hear, it's fairly exhaustive to use it too much. It is.
Vlad admitted.
But I'm not much for weapons either.
He showed them a small knife much like the ones the imps had been wielding.
I'm the opposite of my sister. I've never been able to wield anything heavier than this. If I get the chance I can stab a vital point, but that doesn't happen too often, so.
He sighed.
Well, practice makes perfect.
Luke shrugged.
Today's just warm-up, but when we're headed to the temple you should probably save the magic for when we need it.
Vlad nodded perfunctorily.
Well, aren't we all bundles of sunshine?
Drake chuckled.
Hey, it could have been worse.
Mary blinked.
How, exactly? Nobody else was here to see that.
Drake explained.
And none of them lived to report back what kind of stooges we were.
Luke and Mary chuckled, but Vlad just glared at him.
I fail to see the humor in this.
He began walking away.
Instead of wasting our time jabbering, perhaps we could go find some more. This time, let's try not to make complete fools of ourselves.
Drake winced.
Sheesh, tough crowd there. He's always been grumpy, I'm afraid.
Mary apologized.
He really doesn't mean it most of the time. I suppose he does have a point, though. Yeah, I guess.
Luke admitted.
Well, tally-ho then.
Fortunately, all of the fights after that turned out better than the first disaster, even when they ran into some of the wolves and horses Luke had mentioned. In the end, they brought back more than enough heads to buy the potions Mary had wanted, and left over enough to pay for dinner and a round of drinks at the inn.
Are you going to be staying at this place tonight too, then?
Drake asked Luke as two of them clinked their mugs together.
You're from here? Don't cha have a house or something? Well yeah, my family lives in the city, but I've been bunking down in the guards' quarters ever since I joined up.
Luke explained.
Tonight, I figure I might as well sleep here since we'll be leaving early in the morning and this place is right near the front gate. The king's paying anyways. What's your family like?
Mary inquired, sipping from her own cup of fairly weak wine.
If you don't mind us asking, that is. Not at all.
The knight-in-training chuckled.
Actually, we're pretty heavily connected to the Cornarian army. My dad was captain of the guard before he retired and passed it on to my brother. When Lucan discovered that my family held an orb, we all thought my bro would be the one, but it reacted to me instead. He didn't mind, though. Just laughed and told me I'd better start my training early. Good call, as it turned out. That explains why you and Princess Sarah were hanging out.
Drake noted.
Thought it was a bit odd that she'd be out with just one trainee around, no offense. None taken.
Luke nodded as he finished his ale and signaled the barkeep for another.
Yeah, the royal family and mine go way back. So since me and Sarah were around the same age, we hit it off pretty early on. I helped her sneak out of the palace when she was sick of all the royal humdrumming, which happened quite often. Matter of fact, that was what we were doing when the incident happened.
Falling silent, he took a long drink before turning back to them.
I'm sorry. I'm going on. I'm sure you all have more interesting stories than I do. Not really.
Drake shrugged, leaning back.
Pretty ordinary, really. Mom brought me up, and we all figured I'd just be another normal guy until the soldiers start searching everybody, looking for whatever family has the orb. Surprise surprise, it turned out to be mine and suddenly I'm a hero. Story of my life.
He glanced at Mary.
What about you two? You said you're from Gaia, right? That northern kingdom way up in the mountains. That's it, It's completely isolated. Neither of us had ever set foot out of it until we received the call to come here.
Mary admitted.
Up there, they knew who we were right away. We've been undergoing our magic training our entire lives. It's more boring than you would think, though. Mostly theory and logistics. It seemed like forever before they actually started teaching us specific spells. This is all well and good, I suppose.
Vlad spoke suddenly from the corner where he was slumped over his cup. Surprising both the other men, he had ordered the strongest brew the inn's tavern offered, and had been quietly sipping it without much sign of its effects.
But now that we're all acquainted, perhaps we could turn the conversation to more important matters. Namely, our mission. You're the local, Luke. Mind telling us some details on the temple? Right.
Luke nodded.
The Temple of Fiends is northwest of here, about a day and a half's walk if we don't get in too many fights along the way. If we do, we'll have to camp a fair distance away on the second night. We do not want to hit that place when it's dark out. Amen to that.
Drake agreed fervently.
So what kinds of monsters does he have at his command, anyways? Mostly undead.
Luke explained.
Some of the surrounding wild ones, too. A few giant spiders. But the main problem are the corpse core. Skeletons, zombies, and ghouls. Bad enough by themselves, much worse in huge numbers. Well, I've got some holy magic that will do a number on them.
Mary smiled confidently.
Awesome. That should help.
Drake turned to Vlad.
What about you? The lightning's impressive and all, but the undead tend to burn better than they jolt. I know that much about black magic. Can you do fire as well? If I have to.
Vlad confirmed, sounding a bit reluctant.
Even with our spells and your steel, though, I'm hoping you're not just counting on us demolishing the entire lot of them. That's not happening. No way.
Luke snorted.
The royal family has an ancient map of the temple. From the entrance, the main chamber is straight ahead. If we move fast, we should only have to plow through a few to reach that, and chances are Garland will be in there with the princess. He's probably not totally rational, but at least we can talk to him. Maybe we can convince him to have his armies stand down so he can fight us personally. He's got quite the ego, we've seen that much of him to know that, so if we can offend him, well, it's worth a shot, anyways. It's not much of a plan, I know, but it's the best we can do under the circumstances. It will do.
Vlad decided, rising.
If that's settled then, I will be turning in. Hopefully this will help me sleep better. I'll need it. I know we're gonna start early, but come on.
Drake laughed, finishing his own mug.
We've just met, but we're going to be together for a long time if all goes well. Let's chat a bit longer, huh?
Vlad paused from his path across the room, then turned to glare at him.
We will be associates, you are correct in that. Destiny is forcing us to work together, and I am resigned to that. However, it is hardly required that we get along. And that goes for you in particular, as far as I'm concerned. Good night.
He left, and Drake shook his head.
Just wish I knew what it was I did to piss him off so much so I could apologize already. It's just the way he is, I'm afraid.
Mary apologized.
Even when he was younger, he was always a bit sullen. And this situation has put him in an even worse mood than normal. Sorry, Luke, but it's the truth. None of us were expecting this to come so soon. I wasn't either.
Luke stared down into his mug. Neither Drake nor Mary had much to say to that, and Vlad's departure had left them all less talkative. After finishing their cups, they all decided to head to their rooms as well. Waking from a troubling dream of Sarah and Garland, Luke rose and dressed just as the sun was beginning to rise. Walking out into the hall, he saw that Vlad's door was open. The black mage was sitting in a chair and reading a book.
"So you're up as well?"
Vlad closed the tome and stood.
"I'll rouse my sister, then."
Nodding, Luke knocked on Drake's door. After a few moments, the elf called through it that he'd be out in a moment, and true to his word he soon was, rubbing sleep from his eyes but ready to go. Soon after Mary joined them and the four of them slipped out through the town's gates. The trip to the Temple of Fiends was mostly uneventful on the first day. Staying clear of the forests allowed them to avoid the majority of the monsters in the area, although there was still an occasional encounter. After one last brawl on the edge of a swamp with a pack of wolves, in which Luke's arm had been savaged by a grey leader and required healing from Mary, they broke camp. Fortunately, there was no need to set up a complicated campsite. One of the shops in Corn area sold enchanted tents that could be carried in miniature form, then disenchanted to full size for one night before dissipating into nothingness.
"These things sure are convenient, aren't they?"
Mary remarked as hers appeared in a puff of smoke.
"It's a shame we don't know how to make them. Our teachers were more concerned with teaching us spells that would be practical in battle."
She glanced over to where Drake was roasting the remains of a maddened pony they had encountered over their campfire.
"Are you sure that's safe to eat?" "Positive,"
Luke confirmed.
"When soldiers around here head out of the city, they always supplement their stores with these. And the wolves if they start to run out. Never heard of anybody trying roast hemp before though, so I wouldn't recommend that." "Yeah, I think we can all agree to pass on that one,"
Drake commented.
"Right, looks like this is about done."
Even with the seasonings he had added, horse was far from being the most delicious meat in the world, but they all ate it regardless along with some dried fruits and vegetables.
"Well, it's better than beans and bread, at least."
Luke chuckled. Drake winced.
"Doing better than military rations is hardly much of a compliment, my friend. If we make it back to Corn area, I'm going to spend some time looking up what we'll be able to carry in real supplies for the next trip. There's got to be some dried or salted meat that'll keep." "Perhaps goat?"
Vlad suggested with just a trace of humor. Drake shuddered.
"On second thought, I wonder what fried wolf tastes like."
Mary and Luke both laughed at that, and there was even something almost resembling a smile in the darkness under Vlad's hat. After they had finished, Luke yawned and looked around.
"I suppose we should settle the issue of who takes what watch." "I'll handle most of it,"
Vlad offered.
"I'll only need 2 or 3 hours. If somebody else can stay up that long, I'll take the watch for the rest of the night after I wake up." "You sure about that?"
Drake wondered.
"No insult meant, but that's not much sleep, and tomorrow will be a big day." "I don't sleep much. I never do."
Vlad walked into his tent. Luke shrugged.
"Well, whatever. I'll take it tonight, then, and if we live out tomorrow, one of you guys can take it then."
Mary nodded.
"Seems fair enough." "Initiative. Good quality in a fearless leader."
Drake winked.
"We'll be catching out beauty sleep then. Let's all dream of not horrible death."
The elf and the white mage turned in, leaving Luke to sit by the fire and watch for monsters. 2 hours passed with only a lone wolf causing trouble, the young knight dealing with that without waking the others. After 3 hours, Vlad emerged as he had promised and took the watch. The next day, they arrived at the Temple of Fiends.
"There it is,"
Luke grunted as they emerged from a swamp that had contained several of Garland's servants on patrol. Ahead of them, the temple squatted in fallen grandeur, although they knew it was still inhabited. From the outside it looked like a complete wreckage. Ornamental pillars were toppled, decorative carvings crumbled. The roof was partially collapsed, and the entryway was a gaping hole. With a pair of half-closed windows above, it looked like the maw of some huge, long-deceased beast.
It looks shoddier than I expected, but still creepy.
Drake shuddered.
It's like it was intentional. Like whoever's in charge of it now wanted it to be broken.
Mary shook her head in disgust.
I'm sure they did. I can feel the foulness of it even from here. Good people have no place there. We have to get the princess out if it's not too late. Don't even suggest that.
Luke muttered.
Let's go, then. Smash through the guys at the entrance and make for the center room.
They all paused and took a deep breath, and then they charged.
If they're undead, we'll start things off.
Vlad growled, and Mary nodded affirmatively. That guess turned out to be correct. 3 rotting zombies lurked just inside the entryway. They lurched forward as soon as they saw the light warriors, claws outstretched. And then the clothing of the leftmost one burst into flame, quickly spreading to its flesh, as Vlad cast his spell. The other 2 fearfully scrambled away from it, but Mary was attacking as well. A beam of white light blasted forth from her outstretched hands and struck the zombie head-on. Instantly, it dissolved into dust. The third one stared first at one fallen ally, then the other, and by the time it looked forward again Luke's sword was already falling on it in a massive overhead stab, spearing it through. Without pausing, he ran inside.
Hey, wait for us!
Drake yelled as the other 3 followed. Luke turned back to look at them, and in that moment, a huge blue spider leaped from a dark hall to the side and sank its fangs into him. A stab from Drake killed it, but the fighter was already groaning, skin around the bite turning a sick green.
Poison. Good thing we bought this. Drink it.
Mary instructed, handing him a bottled liquid. Luke did so, and the coloration faded within moments.
Let's be careful. I only have 1 more. Sorry.
Luke shook his head, apologizing even as he sliced apart a moaning ghoul.
I just got carried away. We all know you want to save the princess.
Drake nodded, joining him and killing another with a few well-placed thrusts.
But we do too, you know. We're your buddies. Let us help you.
As if to echo that statement, a hammer and a dagger each slammed into 2 more spiders that had been sneaking up on Luke and Drake.
Garlands that way, as I recall.
Vlad pointed towards the center of the temple.
Shall we stop wasting time on these, or did you want to taunt death even more than we already are? Let's go.
Luke gripped his sword firmly and chopped open the door to the central chamber without even looking to see if it was locked.
Who dares?
The man inside turned around as he heard the noise with a dramatic flourish of his purple cape. Underneath it, he wore polished armor that completely obscured his entire form. Even in the horned helmet, the only gaps were tiny slits for his eyes, and in the darkened temple, nothing could be seen in those. Several bats flew around, squeaking. Beyond him, a massive altar was visible, and on it lay a young woman in a simple red dress. Although it was plain and there was no crown visible in her blonde hair, there was no doubt to any of them that it was Princess Sarah.
She's breathing. She's still alive.
Mary quickly pointed out. Luke exhaled heavily.
Thank the gods. You didn't answer me. How rude.
Garland snapped.
I don't quite see why you're so concerned over her. She's my princess, not yours. Mine, do you hear me? Don't you dare touch her, or I'll kill you. Excuse me.
Luke's eyes went flat.
Since when was she yours? She belongs to herself. Nobody else. She's mine. Mine.
Garland screamed, looking as if he was about to start frothing at the mouth.
I'll kill you, you. Wait.
He stopped in sudden realization.
I know you. You're not just some derelict intruders. You're the Light Warriors. You got it.
Drake suggestively tested the point of his blade.
The one and only. We figured you would be a good place to start off our career against the fiends.
Garland stared at them for a moment, then burst into mocking laughter.
You impertinent fools. You have no idea who I am, do you? I am Garland. I am the Chaos Knight. Save it for somebody who cares.
Luke growled.
Master Garland.
A ghoul behind them hissed.
Sorry we're late, sir. We'll take care of this rabble. No need.
Garland growled.
These brats have offended me. That's a darn shame, that is.
Drake shook his head.
How can we ever apologize?
Garland slowly drew his own sword from his belt. It was longer and more solid than either of the other two, and he held it expertly.
You will die, of course. That's how.
The Chaos Knight struck a pose.
I, Garland, shall.
He faltered for a moment before finishing lamely.
Shall knock you all down. That's the best you can do.
Drake snorted as he and Vlad charged.
Hope your sword plays better than your wordplay.
In response, Garland slammed his blade against the elf's with enough force to slam him back into the opposing wall.
Okay, I deserved that, ow. So you aren't all talk. Good.
Luke slashed at his enemy's shoulder.
I was starting to wonder.
Garland just laughed and began trading blows with him. The heavier armored fighter stood up to the strikes better than Drake had, but before long one of Garland's hits slipped past his guard and drew blood all along his left arm. Luke stumbled, and Garland raised his sword for the killing blow. And like it was a lightning rod, a bolt of electricity slammed through it and down into the armor.
Metal conducts electricity. Lesson for the day.
Vlad informed him coldly. Garland bent over, smoke hissing out from his armor, but then he moved again, charging the black mage. Surprised, Vlad attempted to ward him off with his dagger, but the Chaos Knight sent it skittering away before tearing into his victim with a massive swing.
Brother!
Mary gasped from where she had been healing Drake. Running forward, she swung her hammer, but Garland blocked it with his sword without even turning, then punched her in the gut. Gasping, the white mage fell back, and Garland whirled on her, only to have his sword locked by Drake before he could move.
Heal him,
the elf told Mary.
We'll hold him off.
She nodded and ran around as Garland growled and broke free. This time, though, the elf did not attempt to overpower him, but jumped and dodged his strikes, then thrust when he saw an opening. Blood spurted from the Chaos Knight's side, but he continued onward until Luke, screaming, launched himself forward again. Garland tried to raise his sword in defense, but once again Drake managed to trap it, and the knight in training's blade smashed into the Garland's shoulder. Howling, the Chaos Knight stumbled and fell, and Luke's blade descended, running through cape and armor both to enter his foe's back. Releasing it, he stepped back.
You! Damn you! Light Warriors!
Garland growled, reaching for his sword still with his left hand. Before he reached it, though, the appendage stiffened, and blood gushed from his helmet.
You!
He looked at them all, one after another, and then strangely, his voice changed tone.
Thank you.
And then his movement ceased, and he was still. After a moment, Drake curiously pried off the helmet. Even Vlad's eyes widened in surprise at what was underneath. The man revealed was ancient, withered and aged beyond what the human body should have been able to stand. There was not a hair on his body or a tooth left in his mouth, and his wrinkled skin had a waxy transparency to it.
He looked like that, and fought like that.
Mary wondered.
This man was something awful, all right. Or at least he used to be.
But Luke had ceased to pay attention to Garland. Instead, he was moving towards the altar.
Sarah? Sarah? Are you okay? Can you hear me? It's Luke. Luke?
The princess whispered, slowly opening her eyes.
You came. Of course I did.
The knight in training assured her, stopping at her side.
I told you I'd always be there for you. You think something like this would make me break that vow?
Slowly, Sarah smiled.
You're right. Should have known. You would do it no matter what I told you. You never did listen to me. You blockhead. Thank you. Oh, sure, take all the credit.
Drake remarked, rolling his eyes.
And the loyal Solitaire gets the pretty girl. Should have figured, what?
Sarah looked at the other three now.
You saved me as well. Then you must be the other light warriors. Thank you as well. All of you.
She sat up, then began to climb off the altar.
Princess.
Mary looked alarmed.
You shouldn't move around too much. What did he do to you? Not much, actually.
Sarah assured her.
Mostly just talking. This place's feeling just got to me after a while, and that seems to have lessened up some now that he's dead. I'll be able to walk. That's good. We'll need you for the way out, Muscles.
Vlad remarked to Luke, healed from his injuries.
This promises to be even more unpleasant than breaking in was. We're not clear yet.
But contrary to his words, the assembled monsters were making no move to attack. Quite the opposite, they were hanging back, seeming almost fearful of the four light warriors.
Check it out.
Drake murmured.
What do you suppose that's about? They look pretty spooked. We killed the pack leader.
Luke explained.
We're scarier than he was to them. For now, at least. This kind of thing doesn't last too long. Let's move before they start getting bold again. Right.
Mary nodded. The four of them took up positions flanking the princess, and together they walked towards the entrance. The monsters melted out of their path, and they left the ruined temple of fiends behind. End of chapter.